The call came at 6:47 in the morning, and Calla knew before she even picked up that something had broken. She was already awake. She was always awake by 6, had been for years, the kind of habit that gets carved into you when you're the only adult in a house with 2 kids who need breakfast and lunches packed, and shoes that never seem to be where you left them. The coffee was brewing. She had flour on her wrist from an early attempt at pancakes, and then her phone lit up on the counter with a number she didn't recognize, and something in her chest went very still. She let it ring twice. Then she answered. "Brid. Is this Calla Merritt?" A man's voice, measured, the kind of voice that belonged to someone who chose every word on purpose. "Who's asking?" A pause. "It's Dorian Ashby." She set down the spatula. Slowly. The way you set something down when you're afraid your hands might stop working. 6 years. 6 years, and he was calling her at 6:47 in the morning, like he had every right to, like no time had passed at all, like she hadn't spent 3 months crying in the bathroom after the kids fell asleep, and another 6 months learning how to stop. "Calla, I heard you," she said. She hadn't moved. She was standing in her kitchen in her socks, the ones with the little pineapples on them that her daughter had given her for Christmas, and the coffee maker was beeping and outside the window. The sky over Portland was doing that thing it did in October, where it couldn't decide between gray and darker gray. Normal. Everything normal. Except for the voice on the phone that she had spent 6 years trying to unhear. "I need to talk to you," Dorian said. "We don't have anything to talk about. We have 2 children. Her throat closed. She hadn't told him. Of course she hadn't told him. He had been the one to end it. Had been the one to stand in the doorway of his penthouse apartment in Seattle, with his jaw set and his eyes cold, and tell her to get out. Not just out of the apartment. Out of his life. Out of his city. She could still remember the exact words he'd used. "I don't want you here anymore. I've made my decision. Don't make this harder than it has to be." She had stood there for a full 10 seconds, waiting for something. Apology, explanation, and anything. And there had been nothing. Just his face, which she had loved, going blank and closed like a door being shut. She had left. What else do you do when the man you love looks at you, like you're a problem he's already solved? She had left, and she had driven south with everything she owned in the back of her car, and 3 weeks later she'd taken a test in the bathroom of a gas station outside of Salem, because she couldn't make herself wait until she got home. 2 lines. She'd sat on the floor of that gas station bathroom for 20 minutes. Then she'd gotten back in her car and kept driving. Calla. His voice on the phone was careful now, like he was trying not to spook her. "I'm not looking for a fight. I just want to talk. How did you even find me?" Another pause. "It doesn't matter." It mattered enormously. She turned away from the window and lowered her voice, even though she could hear the kids still upstairs. Pax arguing with himself about which shirt to wear, Bet singing something tuneless and cheerful in the bathroom. They were fine. They were up there, and they were fine. "You need to tell me how you found me," she said. "Your name came up in connection with a pediatric clinic in Portland. You had people look me up." "I wasn't trying to." "Dorian," she said his name once, flat. "I'm going to hang up now, and if you call again, I'll block this number. She came to see me." His voice shifted. Something cracked at the edge of it. "Your sister. Reeve came to my office 2 days ago." Calla went cold. Reeve. Of course. Reeve, who had always wanted what Calla had. Reeve, who had spent the better part of their childhood collecting grievances and calling it sisterhood. Reeve, who had been sleeping with Dorian for 3 months before Calla found out, had been meeting him at a hotel 2 blocks from his office, wearing the perfume Calla had given her for her birthday. Calla had never told Dorian that she knew. She had just left. It had seemed at the time like the cleanest possible version of a very ugly thing. "What did she tell you?" Calla's voice came out quieter than she intended. "She told me you had his children." A beat. "My children. She told me you were here in Portland and that you were raising 2 kids who were mine and that I had a right to know." She closed her eyes. The coffee maker beeped again. Upstairs, she heard the particular sound of Pax's feet hitting the floor. Running, always running. He had never once walked anywhere in his life. She could have had 5 more years. That was the thought she kept circling. If Reeve had just stayed out of it, If she had just left it alone, Calla could have had 5 more years of this kitchen, this routine, these mornings, with their pancake flour and their pineapple socks, and the comfortable shape of a life she had built with her own hands. Instead, here was Dorian Ashby on her phone, saying the word "my" in connection with her children. "I want to meet them," he said. "No, Calla, you don't get to do this." And now her voice was steady, which surprised her, because everything below the surface was not. "You don't get to find me 6 years later and just decide. You don't get to have an opinion about children you didn't know existed until 2 days ago because my sister—" She stopped, breathed. "I built something here, and you don't get to walk into it." He was quiet for a moment. "I'll be in Portland on Thursday." "Don't. I'm not asking permission." She ended the call. For a while, she just stood there. Then Pax came thundering down the stairs. He was 6 and did everything at full speed, a force of motion barely contained in a small human body, and crashed into the kitchen doorway with his sneakers already on and his shirt inside and his entire face radiating the specific confidence of someone who has absolutely no idea his shirt is inside out. "Is there pancakes?" "There are pancakes," she said. Her voice came out normal, warm. She was good at this, had gotten very good at the part where you hold something enormous inside you and keep your face smooth so they don't carry it. "Pax?" She crouched down and straightened his collar. "Your shirt's inside out, baby." He looked down. "Oh." He did not seem troubled by this. "Can I fix it after?" "Sure." Bet appeared behind him, already dressed and already carrying her backpack, because Bet had been the kind of child who was ready early since approximately birth. She was 13 months older than Pax, a fact she invoked often and with great authority, and she had Dorian's eyes, gray and clear and a little too perceptive for comfort. Calla looked at her daughter and thought, "He's coming Thursday." Then she turned back to the stove and flipped the pancakes. She called her best friend Margot's at lunch, stepping out the back door of the clinic into the narrow alley that smelled like rain and dumpsters, because Margot was the only person in Portland who knew the whole story. "He called," Calla said, before Margot could even say hello. "Who?" A pause. "Oh, God. Him." His name came up in connection with the clinic. He had someone find me. She pressed her back against the brick wall, and Reeve told him. Margot was quiet in a way that was worse than if she'd said something. Then, "I'm going to need you to say that again slowly." Reeve went to his office 2 days ago and told him he has children in Portland. She said it plainly. She had learned that if you say certain things plainly enough, without inflection, you can sometimes keep them from destroying you in the moment. "He's coming Thursday. Calla, I know. What are you going to do?" That was the question, wasn't it? She looked up at the strip of gray sky visible between the buildings and thought about Betta's eyes and Pax's laugh, and the 6 years of ordinary mornings she had assembled from nothing, from the wreckage of a relationship that had ended in a doorway, and she thought about Dorian's voice on the phone, careful, controlled, that same quality he'd always had of a man who decided things. "I don't know yet," she said. "You have rights here," Margot said. "He can't just show up and I know he can't, but he's going to anyway." She exhaled. "He said he wants to meet them. And you said?" I said no, but she didn't answer. Because there was a but, even if she didn't want there to be, because the children were his, in the biological sense that she couldn't argue with no matter how many feelings she had about it, and because somewhere underneath all the anger and the fear and the completely legitimate sense of betrayal, she had spent 6 years aware that there would come a day when Pax and Bet would ask, when they would want to know, when no answer she gave would be sufficient. She had just wanted more time. "I need to talk to a lawyer," she said. "Yes, you do. Tonight, I'll find you someone." Margot's voice had gone firm and practical, which was one of the things Calla loved most about her. "And Calla, don't let Reeve near those kids." She spent Thursday morning pretending she wasn't waiting. She dropped Pax and Bet at school, kissed them both, held on a second longer than usual, inhaled the particular smell of Bet's shampoo and the felt tip marker Pax had apparently gotten on his neck somehow, and then she drove to the clinic and saw her morning patients and told herself that Dorian Ashby coming to Portland did not mean he was coming to her specifically. He showed up at 4:15. She was finishing a chart at the front desk when the door opened and he walked in, and her body registered him before her brain caught up. Just a physical fact, like how you know a storm is coming before you check the weather. He was older, obviously. 6 years does that. There were lines at the corners of his eyes that hadn't been there before, and he was wearing a coat she didn't recognize, charcoal gray. But his posture was exactly the same, that quality he'd always had of taking up exactly as much space as he decided to take up and not 1 inch more. Not aggressive, just certain. He saw her across the waiting room and stopped. The receptionist looked between them. "Dr. Merritt, this gentleman said he has an appointment." "He doesn't," Calla said. "Give me a minute, Joanna." She walked him out. Not back inside, outside, onto the sidewalk in the October drizzle, because she was not having this conversation in her clinic, not in the place she had built for herself, not in front of Joanna and the 3 patients in the waiting room who did not need to witness whatever this was about to be. "You shouldn't have come here," she said. "I know." He didn't look away from her. "I came anyway, yes. You're good at deciding things and then doing them regardless of what anyone else wants. I remember." Something moved across his face. Not quite a flinch. "Calla, don't." She crossed her arms. The drizzle was getting into her hair, which she hated. "Say what you came to say." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "I handled things badly. When you left. I handled it badly. That's one way to put it. I was wrong." He said it directly, which she hadn't expected. No qualifier, no but attached to it. "What I said to you, how I said it, I was wrong." She looked at him, tried to find the catch in it because there was always a catch with Dorian Ashby. He was a man who ran a security consulting firm with offices in 4 cities and who had spent his adult life being extremely good at getting what he wanted. People didn't just decide they were wrong. Not like that. "Reeve told you I was with her," she said, "that night, before I left." It wasn't a question. His jaw tightened. "Yes, and you believed her." "Not then. Not immediately." He exhaled. "But I started to wonder. And then He stopped. "I made choices I can't undo, I know that." She had waited a long time to hear something like this. She had imagined what it would feel like, had played versions of it in her head in the early months, when she was still raw with it. She had thought it would feel like relief, or vindication, or maybe just the clean satisfaction of being right. Instead, it felt like nothing she'd prepared for. It felt like standing in the rain looking at a person she had loved and finding that grief and anger could exist in the same space without canceling each other out. "I have children," she said. 2 of them. "They are my children, Dorian. I have raised them for 6 years without any help from anyone except my own 2 hands and the people who chose to show up for me. And you don't get to walk in and have that be yours. I'm not trying to take anything. That's exactly what you sound like. I just want to know them." His voice broke slightly on the last word. Just slightly. Enough that she noticed and wished she hadn't, because it made him human in a way that was inconvenient. "Whatever rights I have, or don't have, I'm not here to fight about that. I'm here because I have children I didn't know about, and I want the chance. That's all. I want the chance." She looked at him for a long time. The rain came down between them, and the cars went past, and somewhere down the street a dog was barking, and she thought about Bet's gray eyes, and how someday her daughter was going to ask a question that deserved a real answer. "You don't walk in and just be their father," she said finally. "That's not how this works. That's not something you get to decide on a Thursday afternoon. I know if I let you anywhere near them, it happens the way I say. My timeline, my terms. And the second you do anything that isn't in their best interest, it's over." He nodded. "Okay, I'm not finished. You're going to explain to me exactly what Reeve told you, and exactly what you said to her, and whether she has any reason to think she has a role in whatever happens next. Because if she does, this conversation ends right now." Something shifted in his expression. "I told her to leave." "That's not an answer," I told her. He paused, gathered himself. "I told Reeve that what she'd done was manipulative, and that she had no place in my life, or in whatever decisions I needed to make going forward. And then I had security walk her out of my building." Calla studied his face. He held her gaze steadily, the way he always had, which she had once found reassuring and now just found complicated. "I'll think about it," she said. That's all I'm giving you today. She thought about it for 2 weeks. She talked to her lawyer, who was efficient and thorough and made very clear what Dorian's legal options were, which were, being honest about it, more than she would have liked. She talked to Margot, who made strong feelings known over wine, and also, eventually, said something that Calla kept turning over. You don't have to like this to let it be right for them. She thought about what Reeve had done. Not with surprise. She had never expected generosity from her sister, but with the specific, worn-out grief of someone who has accepted a thing they never wanted to accept. Reeve had walked into a man's office and handed him information as leverage, or maybe as punishment, or maybe out of some twisted idea that she was owed something for all the ways she imagined the world had shortchanged her. Calla would never know exactly what Reeve had been thinking. She had decided to stop trying to figure it out. She called her lawyer. She called Dorian. She set terms. He met them, everyone. The first time he met Bet and Pax was a Saturday in November, at the park near the house, which was neutral territory chosen specifically because it had a good view of the duck pond, and her children lost all capacity for anxiety near ducks. Calla was there the whole time. That had been non-negotiable. Pax spotted Dorian before she'd even finished introductions and immediately asked him if he could do a handstand. Dorian said he could try. He attempted one, badly, fell over into the grass, and Pax found this so deeply funny that he couldn't stand up straight for almost a minute. Bet watched from 5 feet away, cautious and assessing, with her arms crossed over her chest in a posture that was so purely herself that Calla had to look away for a moment. Then Bet walked over and said, with absolute seriousness, I heard ducks recognize individual human faces. Dorian looked at her. Is that true? I think so, Bet said. I'm trying to get the one with the crooked wing to recognize me, but it keeps swimming away. He crouched down, so they were eye level. What have you tried so far? Bet considered him with those clear gray eyes that were his eyes, her eyes, and then apparently made some internal decision because she said, I bring the same kind of bread every time. So the smell is consistent. Smart, he said, and he meant it. She could hear that he meant it. Bet didn't smile. She was careful with her smiles, saved them, had been that way since she was an infant. But something in her face relaxed, just slightly. Calla stood back and let it happen. It was not simple. She never expected it to be simple. There were conversations that were hard and scheduling conflicts, and one afternoon when Pax, who processed his feelings at high volume and immediately, said, but why didn't he live with us when we were babies? And she had to find words for a thing that didn't have clean words. There were moments when Dorian said something that made her remember why she had loved him, and that was its own kind of hard. And there was the day, 4 months in, early spring, the cherry trees doing what they do in Portland. When she was signing Pax's field trip form at the kitchen counter, and Dorian was there because he had started coming by on Tuesday evenings, and it had just gradually become the kind of ordinary thing that ordinary evenings contained. And he said quietly, standing by the window, I should have come after you. She didn't look up from the form. Yes, you should have. I know I can't. He stopped, started again. I know what I lost. I'm not asking you to. I just need you to know that I know. She set down her pen. She looked at him by the window with the spring light coming in and the sound of Bet reading out loud to Pax in the next room. A book about birds, Bet doing all the voices, Pax interjecting with questions, and she thought about all the versions of this she had imagined, in the years when she was still imagining. None of them had looked like this ordinary, this complicated, this almost, somehow, okay. I know you know, she said. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. It was something smaller and more honest than either of those things. 2 people standing in a kitchen, choosing to show up for the children they'd made, finding out that sometimes what's right and what's easy are very different things, and you do the right thing anyway. Betta's voice drifted in from the next room, reading something about migration patterns. Pax said, but where do they go in winter? And Bet said, I'm getting there. Let me finish. Calla picked up her pen, finished signing the form. Outside, the cherry trees were doing what they always do, reckless and brief and full of something that looked, from a certain angle, very much like beginning.